our lifestyles become, the more we are contributing to environmental damage. How do we manage bettering our lifestyles and not polluting at the same time? Jekka? It's a big question.
Well,
I
could jump in on this. I mean, we have to make a difference, make a distinction between quality of life and standard of living, and we can address quality of life, standard of living in terms of how much we use in terms of resources and how much we pollute, while still maintaining and even improving our quality of life. Nobody wants to be in a car 2 hours a day. Nobody wants to. I mean, there's a bunch of things in our society that are fundamentally wrong in terms of our lifestyles. So it's absolutely possible to move towards a world where we're consuming less and yet we have better quality of life because we're interacting with people more. Because we're not, in the rat race trying to make ends meet. So you have to make that distinction. I mean, right now, yes, it's true that the top earners in Canada have increased their greenhouse gas emissions, but we have to really come to the realization that all of Canada is polluting too much and using too many resources. We have to address that because there's also the global equity issue. Right now, we are using resources and polluting at a rate that is way above what we see from developing countries, especially the least developed countries, and those are the communities that are going to be, and the countries that are going to be hurt the most by the impacts of climate change.
I want to get to that. In terms of, Clayton, you mentioned specifics. The way it's going to play out in terms of taking action. Let me give a specific. The carbon tax, a carbon tax. Would a carbon tax effectively penalize poor people in Canada? If the poorest people spend the greatest share of their income on energy, should we be concerned about that when it comes to a carbon tax, Clayton?
Well, whether you're talking about carbon tax or, some people may have heard the term, cap and auction, cap and trade. I think something that we need to understand is that any mechanism to mitigate climate change that puts its reliance on the market that caused the problem in the first place is problematic, and there are significant implications, particularly on the poor. And so, I guess from our organization's perspective, what we need to do is to implement policies that turn off the tap right now. And we're concerned with any kind of policies that enable the fossil fuel industry to continue to operate as business as usual. And that's because of the fact that there are local communities that live beside large-scale developments, big-time emitters, whether it's coal-fired power plants or tar sands development. And the majority of these communities are First Nations, low-income communities of color, low-income white communities, and they're suffering disproportionately as a result of this industry being allowed to continue to operate as business as usual. And then when you throw climate change in the mix, these communities carry even more disproportionate burdens. And so, if we're going to be implementing solutions to address the problem, we've got to start right at the crux. We have to turn off the tap, and we have to also be very mindful of the implications of the solutions we implement on those communities that are already carrying an immense burden economically and as well as health-wise.